Hey, it's Darren from Property Prosperity here. I thought I'd have a chat to you about what I got up to last night. I was out until about 10 o'clock last night trying to negotiate a deal on a block of land that I'm trying to sell. If you're a real estate agent, you probably know what I'm talking about. If you're not, basically at the end of the day, as a real estate agent, what you're trying to do is get two parties. There's a buyer and there's a seller. Always the seller wants more and the buyer wants less. And so you're sort of trying to get everyone to compromise and sort of meet in the middle, basically. Quite often, you know when you've done your job properly as a real estate agent when nobody's happy. If the buyer feels like they've sold it too cheap and the owner feels like they've paid too much for it, then you know you've done the buyer paid too much for it. You know you've done your job right, because basically that's the whole point of it. Is you're acting on behalf of the vendor. You're trying to get the buyer to pay the maximum they possibly can pay. Really, in the perfect world, you want to get multiple people which are competing against themselves to trying to pay more than they otherwise would pay. But then quite often, at the end of the day, people are really educated nowadays. They have a really good idea of where the market's at, and so people are pretty informed. So quite often they know what they think it should be worth before they come in putting in offers. And so quite often you find your offers are pretty close to what you've put it on the market for. And if the agent's done their job right, really, they should have a good idea of what it should be worth from the start, and they put it on the market at a pretty fair price, hoping they get people then competing against it. So it's basically the situation where I had with this block of land. I knew it was a pretty fair price. It was priced a lot less than any other block of land around the area, so I knew I wasn't really competing against any other blocks of land. There were some issues with the blocks, and obviously that's why the price was reflecting that. But the cool thing is about blocks of land, and which a lot of people don't realise, is for the owners, there's always a plan B. So if you're trying to sell a block of land and you can't sell it, then you can just build a house on it and then sell it as a finished off house. Or even if you can't sell it as a finished off house, you can always rent it out. Hey Asley, thanks for joining. So yeah, if you can't sell it as land, you can build a house. You can either rent it out or you can sell it, and so then basically you're going to sell it as market price for a finished off house. Quite often, to sell a block of land compared to a finished off house, because it's a bit of a hassle to build a house, to be honest. So you really have to give them incentive to buy a block of land and build a house. And so quite often you'll find a block of land is always cheaper, or a block of land and building a house is going to be cheaper than a finished off house. And that's just, I describe it as like a developer's discount. The developer gives you a bit of a discount just because of the hassle factor. On top of that, you get some benefits as far as stamp duty savings, so you only pay stamp duty on the land rather than the house and land, and there's a whole pile of other benefits associated with building rather than just buying an existing house. But saying that, that's where I got to. So I had a buyer and had a seller, and the seller had decided that was the lowest they were willing to go to. The buyer had decided that was the highest they were willing to go to, and I was out by 10 grand basically. The thing for the buyer, I was saying to them, the seller doesn't have to keep dropping his price, because at a certain point, he's already dropped his price so far. At a certain point, he's going to say, stuff it. I'm basically giving you a discount already compared to what a finished off house would cost. And so, you're already getting a bargain essentially. By the time you buy a block of land and build a house on there, you've made money straight away. There's equity in the property by the time. In this example, it's probably $40,000-$50,000 in equity straight away. So just by buying a block of land, building a house, you've made 40-50 grand. And then so why would the owner then drop the price by another 10 grand? That's essentially like 60 grand he's going to lose by not building the house. And it gets to a certain point in time, developers don't really want to build houses because it adds a lot of time, there's a lot more cost associated with it. But when it gets to a certain point in time, when it's when you're talking like 60 grand, you might as well, hey, well that's a fair bit of cash. I might as well just build the house myself and make the money myself. So that's what the situation with this scenario. I came back to the purchaser, I said, hey, here's the deal. You just have to build this house. You're probably going to make 40-50 grand straight away. We're arguing over the sake of 10 grand. Maybe if you can come back in the middle for you come in halfway and add another 5 grand to your asking price, then who knows? I can go back to the owner. They may decide, hey, well, we'll just sell it less than what we wanted to, but at least we're going to get not have to worry about having to build the house. We can just move on to our next project. So I tried to explain to the purchaser the value in that, the 40-50 grand worth of value. And I knew these people were in a situation where they're just average Joes like you or me, so they didn't have heaps of cash. So it's not like, it wasn't a lot of money to them. But I think the thing I find for a lot of people is they don't appreciate in the world of property that it's real money. When you're talking potential to buy a block of land, build a house, and you make 40-50 grand, a lot of people, 40-50 grand, that's a whole year of sitting there, digging holes or sitting at a computer typing away for a whole year. When you think about that, that's whatever you work 40 hours a week times by 50 weeks in a year, that's like 2,000 hours of sitting there digging a hole or typing away at a computer screen or whatever you're earning. That's some serious cash. And I think that's the thing I find surprising often is people don't really realize that, in the world of property, it's real money. It's just like you sitting at a desk typing it away. How much easier it is to buy a block of land and build a house, and you suddenly made 40, 50 grand without essentially having to do hardly anything. You've had to ring up a builder, decide on the builder, pick out your colours and doorknobs, taps, all that sort of stuff, and then you build your house and you made 50 grand. How much easier can that get? And obviously as a developer, you might knock a house down and subdivide, you might make 100 grand or 200 grand or whatever it happens to be. Some seriously crazy money. And I talk to people all the time, they're looking at doing a development and they come to me and they go, oh yeah, well, I don't know, and I analyze the whole project and we look at it and they might only make 50 grand. Some people, they're like, 50 grand, man, I can't be bothered for the sake of 50 grand. But other people are like, 50 grand, man, that's unbelievable. I can't believe I would make 50 grand for doing almost nothing. And literally, when you do a subdivision, you might only do, I don't know, maybe 20 hours work. It might take a year for the whole subdivision to go through, but literally you've only spent 20 hours of your time over a whole year and you've made 50 grand, or you might make 100 grand, or you might make 200 grand. So when you break that back down into working per hour, how much more you get paid doing building a house or doing a subdivision or doing a renovation compared to, having a day job. And I think that's what people too often do. They don't match it up to what it would actually be if they had their day job. And in this example, this person missed out on the opportunity. The owners then decided, hey, I'm just going to build it myself and make the money myself. So, that potential buyers missed out on that opportunity to make 40, 50 grand without doing particularly much. And for the sake of 5 grand, they could have come up in their price. And the other thing to remember too is, because in theory it sounds like, hey, well, it's 5 grand out of their pocket they have to spend. But in reality, when you're buying a property, you're really only paying, the portion that the bank's not covering. So in this example, if they were borrowing 80%, they now have to kick in 20%. So in this example, for the sake of 5 grand, the bank's going to lend you 4 grand of that. So you're only really kicking in $1,000 of your own cash. So you put in an extra $1,000 of your own cash, you get to buy this property that then you can build and then sell off down the track for an extra $40,000, $50,000. So for the sake of $1,000, this person's missed out on like a $50,000 project, which would have essentially replaced their whole wage for the whole year. So that's basically my 2 cents. So hopefully it makes sense to you, and hopefully now you start to think about property in slightly different sense. It is real money. When you get out there and buy a property and do a development, do a renovation, buy a block of land, build a house, sell it off, whatever, it's real money. It's the same as you going to work, working away every day. So hopefully you value it in a similar sort of sense, and hopefully you see the importance of just getting out there, buying property, trying to create value, and how it can actually, at some point in time, when you really get good at it, or you build your confidence up to the point where you're willing to go and give it a go and do it on a more regular occasion, you can see in a situation like I explained before, if you just buy a block of land and build a house, and if you make 50 grand out of just the difference between the value of a not built house and a built house, that's essentially a whole wage. You don't have to give up your job, but then at least you can, if you can double your wage in that year, just literally by spending, 20 hours extra on top of over a whole course of a year, you've doubled your wage just by buying one block of land and building a house, and you just do it each year, or doing one development, and you made 100 grand. You suddenly incrementally, massively increasing your wage just by doing not that much more outside of your day job. So hopefully that's opened your eyes to some possibilities out there. And, if you are thinking about, getting into property, you're not really sure what to do, feel free to, send me a message, and I'm happy to have a chat about you and point you in the right direction. Obviously, if you've had experience before in the past where, maybe you've missed out on an opportunity where for the sake of a few grand, you could have bought the property, and then you've looked back down the track and someone else has done it and they've made 100 grand or 200 grand, and you sort of kicked yourself for doing so. I know in my experience, I quite often say to people, whenever I'm buying a property, I always feel like I'm paying too much. And whenever I sell a property, I always think I'm selling it too cheap. It's one of those things in hindsight when you look back at property. If you look at properties you had 10 years ago, man, if I'd only kept that property, how much it'd be worth now? Or if I'd only bought 10 properties when I bought that property that I thought I paid too much for at the time. And, in hindsight, property, because it goes up in value over time, it's always worth a lot more in the future than it feels like it is in the present. So, the key is to get out there and do something, because with property, it's being in the market, it's buying properties, getting there, doing things that's going to create and set yourself up for the future. So, I suppose that's the key for me, is just get out there and start doing things. And, the more properties you have, the more benefits you got down the track as the market continues to improve. So, hopefully you get out there and hopefully you get some benefit out of this little chat, and hopefully you get out there and start doing things yourself. So if you've liked what I had to say, click on the like button. If you haven't liked it, still click on the like button, because I really appreciate it. And if you know someone that's out there struggling to, try and find a few extra bucks in their pocket, or they're struggling to try and get into the property market and they're struggling to find that perfect property, then click on the share button. Hopefully then they'll start to realize, even if you're only making 40, 50 grand on a property, that's a crazy amount of money when you compare it back to your day job. So I'd love to hear what you got to say. If you've got something you'd like me to talk about in a future episode, happy to have a chat and put a comment in the comment box. So I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye for now.